AI is your thought partner and it gets to be in the passenger seat of the car with you and whatever it is that you're doing. It's not the driver. You're the driver and it mirrors you. So prompting it by knowing your own chart is extremely, extremely powerful. Hello, my gorgeous. Welcome to another episode of Natalia Benson, the podcast. It is so wonderful to be with you again. Thank you for tuning in. And I'm very excited to talk to you about this today. I haven't really talked very openly about AI or like my thoughts around AI, mostly because I've just myself been exploring AI in a very simple way. But I definitely have had some thoughts around astrology and AI and what I would like to think of as like a healthy use of AI with astrology. So I'm excited just to explore all of that with you and just share my perspectives. And I had, lately I want to give you like a couple little like life updates and then let's kind of see where we flow with this conversation. But I've been in a very interesting space and I've talked about this year on the podcast where I really came to understand like I am complete, like just within my content, just teaching like the basics of astrology. I've talked about astrology for like 16 years. I've been studying astrology for like 16, 17 years. So I really just came to this place, especially as a manifesting generator, and I'm a sacral manigen. I don't know if all manigens are sacral, but from what I understand, I'm a sacral manigen. And when I'm burnt out on something, it's like I have almost like a repulsion to it. And it's not to say that I'm like repulsed by astrology, far from it. But even like for those of you who've been with me for a little while, you know that like last year, I stopped doing the podcast. I was having for lack of a better word, like a repulsion to doing the podcast. And what I've learned, especially like from one of my besties, her name's Erin Claire. She's been on the show. She's an absolutely exquisite human design expert. I learned a lot from her that when my sacral is like, when I'm burnt out on something, it will be like that repulsion or that resistance. And it's so interesting that I had that with the podcast, even though I love the podcast, but I got burnt out. And for those of you who know my story, you know that in the last year I had like mold exposure. My dad passed away. I got divorced. Like there's just no way I could have kept up with doing weekly or even bi-weekly episodes. And my sacral and my intuition and my body's wisdom was like letting me know, like, you need to stop. And I listened. And what's really interesting is I got the same hit around my astrology content on Instagram and even just being so forward leading with astrology in my work. And it's not to say this is just me speaking for myself, but I just realized, okay, it's time for me to evolve not only the way I work with astrology personally, but the way that I teach it. And just so you know, like my ethos a little bit, my number one reason for teaching you astrology is because I want you to have a healthy relationship to your finances and a healthy relationship to like your habits in your life and your purpose and like who you're here to be. That's really what excites me about astrology. It's how I personally use astrology. And then another aspect of astrology that I think I'll always be excited by is transit astrology. And I look at more personal transits. So I don't look at like the big sweeping collective meaning of transits. That just doesn't really interest me as like an Aries astrologer. I want to talk to you about astrology in the context of how it is personally impacting you and how it is personally interacting with your chart. And another thing I know I've talked about on the show where I really like to teach astrology because I want you to have like a healthy self-awareness. And that's very Aries. Like I have an Aries stellium. So, I always say that astrologers are like, we're like artists and scientists because we all study the same system. That's the system of astrology. But we all have our own interpretations of how to use the system. And that's what I love to do. And that's a lot of what this podcast and my work is devoted to, is just like, how can we creatively work with the system to live better lives? And so the first thing that I want to say, especially, I'm so curious, like with you, my community, like where you are on the spectrum of like AI. I remember in my last relationship, my ex has a Mercury in Aquarius. So he was really the first person who talked to me about AI and ChatGPT. He's actually the person who taught me how to use it. I was so like, no, I don't need this. And he was like, no, you need it. I'm going to show you how to use it. And I'm so grateful because I do find ChatGPT so incredibly helpful to supplement the things that I'm either not really good at doing or I don't have time to do. And I also, as my dear friend Lila O'Connell says, I like to also utilize ChatGPT as a thought partner. So a couple weeks ago in MWMM, we had Lila come and talk to us. She's a Gemini. She works in tech. She's worked in tech for a very long time. And she has also been someone who has really educated me about why do I keep saying astrology with AI? Maybe because they both have A's. And my angels, I'm going to be so honest with you. I taught a masterclass last night. This is my second episode that I'm recording in a row. I have this really bright light on me. So if I stumble on some of my words and I sound a little cuckoo, just please be gentle with me. And I love you so much. I'm going to do my best to really deliver for you on this though, because this is something I'm extremely fascinated by. And I'm so curious about your babe's relationship to this and your thoughts about this. So as things come forward for you, please like send me a DM just at Natalia_Benson. And I just want to hear like how this lands for you and where you're at, because I'm just so curious with my community specifically, how you're using this technology, what you think about it, the good and the fearful, because I definitely have my fears and my thoughts about it because it is something that is so, so, so incredibly powerful. So Lila came and spoke to us in MWMM about how to be, like spiritual business owners, but utilize the power of AI. And something that she brought forward that I thought was so powerful is she was like, number one, you have to understand that AI has been around for like 3 decades already. It just hasn't been as public as it is now, like with whatever these are called, language processors, or like whatever these platforms are called, like ChatGPT. That's the only one that I know. That's the only one that I use. But it's very, very fascinating because at the end of the day, what I find so powerful about AI, this was what Lila talked us through, and this really aligned with me, is like we can use it as our thought partner. It's not there to drive the car of our business. It's not there to like drive this, at least is my opinion, because here's the thing, AI becoming so prominent and these processors becoming so prominent. What's interesting, and I know this is like, can be a very controversial topic because there's a lot of social questions that come up around something like this. And I just want to use a disclaimer. I'm not here to necessarily speak on that specifically. I'm totally open on learning and understanding the implications. But please, if you hear me talking about this and it triggers you and like you want to attack me, I'm just going to ask you not to do that, because I'm just here to have like a thoughtful dialogue around what I understand around this and how I would love to see my community and anyone who listens to this utilize like a platform like ChatGPT with astrology in a more thoughtful and even responsible way. So I'm not here to argue on all the implications simply because I don't know what they are, but I am here to talk about what I'm versed in, which is I've been an astrologer and a student of astrology for an extremely long time. And now, there are so many like astrology GPTs and all of this stuff that's quite powerful and it's very democratizing. But I also have my own perspectives on how we can utilize these platforms if we are going to utilize them in a way that's thoughtful. And for me personally, and maybe it's just being a millennial, I will always want to read a book. Like, I am always going to want to read a book. I'm always going to want to place my feet on the earth and not be glued to my screen forever. But here's the thing. I also am not naive to think and to understand that my generation, the millennial generation, we didn't have technology and screens in our face the way that, let's even say Gen Z, or I think Gen Alpha is the next generation after Gen Z, and even more recent, the babies being born now. It's this is just going to be a fact of life. Whereas this is the unique generational differences, is that as we get older, there are going to be things that just we're going to have to adapt to. But whereas the younger generations, it's just a fact of life for them. Even I know when I was in 6th grade, we had computer class, and they were massive boxy computers. And I remember building my own website, and I literally loved it. It's so funny what I ended up, doing so much later in my life, and having, this personal brand and building this community online and using my sleek little MacBook and all that stuff. But it's just I kind of had that, but then I also notice where my skills with video stuff is so I've got, Ahmet, my dear friend Gemma, her husband comes over and he films my YouTube and he films for the podcast. And it's just I need someone like him. He's a Virgo, by the way, because this camera that he uses and the tech and the file transfers and stuff, it's just a no for me. And then even looking at the way content shifts and the way content is changing, it's I'm not super versed on the high level video editing and all of this other stuff that seems so commonplace in a lot of content that's served through Instagram. However, what I will say is that I'm always willing to learn, and I'm always willing to evolve my skill set in a way that still feels nourishing to me. Again, this might be a little bit of an interesting topic, but I'm just very simply not drawn to TikTok. And even though over the years, and that might be a mistake in the long run, I have no clue. But what I will say is it's just never energetically called to me. Whereas understanding ChatGPT and understanding AI, that even though it scares me a little bit because it's so different than how I function and sort of how I've grown up and the way I've run my business, I still feel an energetic call to understand it and to utilize it in the ways where it's helpful, because I can feel it's important. Whereas for me, I like creating on Instagram. I like having a podcast, and I don't personally use TikTok. So that again, it's where can we merge our values and what nourishes us and what feels authentic to us with technology? And I think that that's a really important confluence of unique sort of sides of the coin, so to speak, that we get to explore, especially as something like AI becomes so much more commonplace and in the hands of so many different people. And again, I just want to preface this one more time, because I just know that this happens every so often. It's you speak into something, and instead of people wanting to have a thoughtful dialogue with you, it's the fact you're talking about it, it triggers this stuff for them. If you want to bring me things or articles, or this is always how I am with my community. I'm just you guys, I'm here to learn right along with you. And I don't have any kind of expertise in this area, only perspectives and only a very, very limited lived experience around this. But if you have things or thoughts, and of course, then I'll use my discernment and judgment, but I'm so open to learning more about what this is. And even if there are thoughtful dialogues around the projections of how this could impact people or social or our culture or our economy, I'm very open to all of that. I don't know a lot about it, and I don't tune into a lot of conversations around it. So I just want to leave that there, JIC, because I've been online for a long time and I've heard it all. So I want to go back really quickly to some really nourishing and thoughtful conversations that I've had around AI recently. My really dear friend, Anna Nasseri, she hosted an incredible mastermind up in Los Angeles. It's called the Visionary Mastermind. One of my favorite masterminds that I have ever been to. It was so amazing. I met the most incredible people. It was in Venice. And it was really interesting because she had my really dear friend, Jim Carter, who I met in a mastermind that I did many years ago with Chris Harder. He came and spoke to us about AI. And Lila, who is a dear friend of mine, she lives near me and she's a mom. She has 2 kids, really good friends with her and her husband. She has also been a huge educator for me around AI. And like I said, she's worked in the tech space for a really long time. So these are like more, I think that this is what's helpful is when we start to have these conversations, not in these sort of sterile, like media or just like people's perspectives, but like people who know this stuff, like what is their experience or what are their thoughts about it? How are they using it? And I will say that Jim, the way he taught about AI, I told him like when we started the discussion and he was starting to do his keynote, I was like, it scares me. I was like, I definitely think sometimes like, could this totally replace me? And the question is, I think that's a lot of people's questions is what is going to be the impact? And Pluto and Aquarius to me, which will be moving with Pluto and Aquarius until 2044. It's a pretty long darn transit, Pluto and Aquarius. But I think it's interesting because Pluto represents power and then Aquarius represents humanity and people. And it's fascinating. And it also represents connective technology and the future. And Pluto is an interesting kind of energy in astrology because it's power, it's self-accountability, it's depth, it's intensity. There's a lot. Pluto is a powerful energy in astrology. And with Pluto moving through Aquarius, we have to think of it like if there are these democratizing tools, how are we using them and how can we still maintain accountability within them? But my big takeaway from both Jim's keynote and then Lila coming and talking to MWMM, very positive, very empowering. And really like the way Lila put it that I loved is she was like, AI is your thought partner and it gets to be in the passenger seat of the car with you and whatever it is that you're doing. It's not the driver. You're the driver and it mirrors you. So I find all this very fascinating. And the reason I want to take this to astrology and going back to what I had mentioned about the repulsion where I was like, I'm just kind of done with this. I'm done leading with this. There's other ways I can feel that my work wants to materialize and that my work wants to express. It's interesting because that's when I started to get a lot more clear on like, okay, I want to actually teach and guide the babes in my community on how to use astrology. And if they're going to use ChatGPT with astrology, how to use it in a way where it's clarifying and empowering. Because, being that I've studied this stuff for a really long time and then plugged things in to study and understand or get a new perspective through ChatGPT, what I find really fascinating is that there have been times where ChatGPT has been wrong and I've had to correct it. And I don't know if you babes know about this, but on my Instagram, this was maybe like a month ago, I decided to completely give away my astrology mini course. This is a course that's based off of my astrology guide. That guide took me like years to put together. And then I turned the whole guide into a mini course where I teach every single aspect. And it's literally available for free. It's pinned on my Instagram. All you have to do is just input your email and it's completely free. We don't charge for it. And you have access to this astrology mini course. It's literally yours to keep. And I think you have a year access from the time that you enroll in it. And the reason I wanted to do this is because I wanted to set the foundation for you babes to become your own astrologer, for you to actually utilize the system of astrology from a place of awareness so that when you go into ChatGPT, you can prompt correctly. Because what I found is that you need to know where everything is and prompt correctly in order to get the right answers. Because I've even had someone recently, they did something for me in a session and they were like, oh yeah, your Mars is in this, or your da-da-da is in this. And I was like, my Mars isn't in that. It's not in, it was interesting. And I was like, you have to know how to prompt it. So it's like, if you're like, hey, tell me more about having Mars and Gemini in the 5th house. And then you can get the information. Or you can be like, hey, Mars is currently transiting my 9th house. What can that mean for me? And how can I use it as it pertains to my business? So prompting it by knowing your own chart is extremely, extremely powerful. And I think what's important with AI is understanding that it's based on the total collection of human wisdom. And it still needs a human touch. I want to quote Lila again, because this conversation's fresh on my mind. She also said that only a really small percentage of women use AI. So she was saying that it's really important that as AI is learning us, that more women are contributing to the AI platforms. And I thought that was really fascinating. I love it because my ChatGPT calls me love. It's like, hey, love. It talks to me. It's like, hey, babe. I'm like, yeah, that's cute. Sometimes I'll share with you a couple of ways that I use ChatGPT these days. I love to utilize ChatGPT to interpret my dreams. I love to use ChatGPT for my air fryer recipes. I love to use ChatGPT to help me decipher parts of my chart, to decipher parts of my tarot readings. I will use ChatGPT to help me come up with clear hooks for marketing. I am not always good at that. And here's what I find really interesting. The more that we utilize these platforms, I think a conversation that comes up that is extremely, extremely viable is is this going to replace my job? Is this going to replace whole industries? And again, that's something I don't know specifically now how to speak on, because I also don't know if we're completely sure how this is going to unfold and what the impact is going to be. But my Sagittarius moon and my optimism always wants to feel and know that people will always want people. And I can't speak for everyone, but I know for myself, yes, there are some things that ChatGPT helps me with and some ways of working with my astrology that it helps me with and I love. But also, I'm going to always want to get a reading from a live astrologer. But I can't always get a reading from a live astrologer. What am I going to get a reading every single day? No, I can have ChatGPT reflect things to me and help me with things and give me some food for thought or some new ways to think about my chart or my transits. But going to an astrologer that I love and respect, even my tarot reader, her name is Sophia Knapp. I've been going to her for 7-8 years. Yes, do I love when ChatGPT analyzes my tarot at 11 o'clock at night when I'm doing a reading? Yeah, it's really cool and it gives me a new way to think about things. But that's never going to replace me having a thorough, beautiful, empowering reading with Sophia, where she is very psychically attuned, very spiritually attuned. She's a Pisces, and I can have this amazing human interaction with her while she reads my cards. I also just an astrologer that I'm really into right now. Her name is Christina Luna. I think that her Instagram is called lunation.live. Let me actually look up her Instagram really quickly. I actually had a transits reading with her recently. I'm just looking this up. Yeah, lunation.live. Her name's Christina Luna. So I had a transit reading with her recently that blew my mind. She did 3 months and it was just, going back and listening to it down to the dates. I mean, my best friend turned me on to her and introduced me to her. And when I go back and I actually re-journaled the 2-hour reading that she did for me recently. And I was just almost in tears from the accuracy and from the things that she touched on. Because here's the thing, ChatGPT, and again, this could be an incorrect statement, but I'm just going to say it. It is not going to replace like that psychic gift of the connection between spirit and matter. I mean, maybe it can touch on it. One time I was driving and it was after my dad had passed, and I was like, be like my spirit guide and give me a message, like that, something that my dad would say to me. And it was really beautiful, but it's like, that's not going to replace me going to Susan Grau and like getting a mediumship reading. So that's just my thoughts about it, especially because we're all going to utilize a GBT. We're all going to utilize these platforms, hopefully in a way that serves and supports our lives. But my prayer, my intention with myself and the way that I use it is that it's not going to replace these human relationships. It's not going to replace community. But that's just me. I can't speak for everyone else, but that's just me. So how can you start to like prompt with, let's say, something like ChatGPT to like support your astrological studies? So step one, I would suggest that you understand your own chart and you take something like my astrology mini course, which you can go to my profile. If you haven't done this already, you'll see that there's on the upper left corner, there's a picture of me. I'm wearing all black. Surprise, surprise. My Capricorn rising, Scorpio midheaven. And the post is why I am saying goodbye to astrology. So if you go to that post and read through it, it'll give you what it is that you need to do to access the free astrology course. So my suggestion would be to study something like that so you can get the basics, you know how to write down your placements, because then you're going to be able to actually go into ChatGPT and be like, hey, Chat, I have a sun in Aries in the 3rd house and it trines my sun trines my Uranus. Can you tell me more about this? Okay. And then when you learn like the transits portion, you can be like, hey, I have the sun transiting my 10th house of business right now. What does that mean? I have Venus transiting my 7th house of partnership right now. What does that mean? And so these are ways where when you understand the basics and you have the tools and the human touch, you can prompt correctly. But if you just give all of your energy over and you're just like, hey, like interpret my chart. Here's my birth time and date. You need to triple double check that you're getting accurate information. Because what I found when people have done that for me, unfortunately, I know, I'm like, but that's not where my Mars is, or that's not that placement doesn't make a square to that. It's like, you have to know just so you can be clear and you can understand your chart and have the power in your hands. And then you can prompt clearly and you can get really great insight. So my loves, I think what I want to leave you with is I want you to learn astrology. You can learn it through my mini course or just learn it from a course, learn it through YouTube, but learn astrology, learn the system before you just go over and start prompting away so that you clearly know your chart. You know where your sun is, you know what your ascendant is, you know your planetary placements. And then you can literally utilize ChatGPT from this place of like, and obviously I know there's other AIs that you can use, but you can utilize this stuff from a place of knowledge and awareness, and then you can prompt correctly. And not only is that great for so many reasons, but also you're going to be getting more accurate information versus if you don't really know what you're prompting and you just kind of let ChatGPT do it. Like, especially I found like with dates, like when I've been studying, like, okay, what is an eclipse? What's the upcoming date? I don't know why that is, but I've never had Chat produce an accurate date. So I've always thought that that was really interesting. But I think what's so special, my loves, is like keeping with this idea of like becoming your own astrologer. Again, it doesn't need to replace the spiritual practitioners in your life. My prayer is that there's always a place for us because that human interaction and that human connection is so, so important. But it is also very democratizing and very empowering when you can get access to information that helps you and supports you. And that's exactly what astrology is. And astrology is Aquarius ruled. It is a tool for the people. It is a tool of the future. It's a tool of humanity. And so if we're going to use connective technology, like something like these GBTs, etc., and we want to get to know ourselves better, I think that's beautiful. But you just want to make sure that you have an understanding, you can prompt with clarity, and you can get really great information, and it can help you and support you. Because sometimes, like, let's say you wake up at 3 a.m. and like you have a question or like something's really on your mind. Like, you're not going to be able to call an astrologer or whoever, but maybe you get on ChatGPT and you're just like, here's my question, or here's this transit that I know that I'm having. Something that I started doing that I find really, really interesting. So you babes might know this, but my all-time favorite astrology app is Time Passages. I love Time Passages. And so what I'll do is I'll go into Time Passages, and especially if I'm having like a particularly wonky day or a really hard day, I'll go into Time Passages and I'll screenshot my transits for the day, because Time Passages knows my chart. It is an astrology app built by astrologers. It is so unbelievably powerful and accurate. The interpretations and the synthesis are beautiful and empowering and clear. And I'll literally screenshot it and I'll be like, because sometimes I don't have time to read every single interpretation, but I'll go into ChatGPT, I'll share the screenshot and I'll say, hey, I'm having a really crappy day today. Can you interpret some of these transits on what I could be feeling or what could be going on based on my transits today? And then I'll have chat do it. I'll check it for accuracy. And then I'll press the little voice button that literally is like, it'll read it to you. And then as I'm getting ready, or let's say this is probably something I do later in the day. Hopefully I'm not waking up and while I'm getting ready, I'm already having a weird day. That's very rare that happens, I'd say, especially with my morning practices. But one thing that I find really fascinating is like, it'll read it back to me. And I'm always like, oh my God, that's so helpful. That's so affirming. But again, just like this formula that I'm recommending to you, I'm working with an astrologer-based app. Just like if you learn through my astrology mini course, you're learning from an astrologer, and then you can go and prompt properly. So yes, my loves, that's all I have to say about that. I'm so curious about just like opening this conversation. I'd love to hear where you babes are at with all of this. I also really, on so many levels, I think there's so much beauty and so much freedom and expansion that can be created by right, healthy use of technology. But we're also just going to have to see like what the zeitgeist is and how this unfolds in our lives while contributing to it in a way that contributes to, its evolution, and reflecting also like spiritual values and empowerment and right use and empowering use of the mystical and the esoteric. So I'm curious to hear how this lands for you. Please send me a DM at Natalia_Benson. And I also want you to know that when this episode comes out, we will have open enrollment to join me for the Financial Glow Up Challenge. This is going to be a 6-day live challenge where I am going to support you on building your money system and your specific money date so you can move into 2026 from a place of empowerment, from a place of financial clarity. And if you're curious more, if you didn't get to listen to my last episode on how to date your money, great episode if you feel really disorganized or chaotic with your finances and you're just really wanting to step into deeper stability, abundance, clarity, peace of mind, and freedom when it comes to your money. It's going to be a really beautiful 6-day challenge. I'm very, very excited about it. You're going to have not only live time with me every day, but a beautiful group of women. And we're just going to be supporting one another in up-leveling our financial capacity and our financial wellness, because we deserve it, and we deserve to experience that level of peace on a day-to-day basis. And having a healthy relationship to money helps us to do that. I love you so much. Thank you, as always, for tuning into this episode. This was really fun to record, and I will see you in the next episode. Coming up next month, I have 2 incredible guest interviews for you, and then I can't even believe it, but it's going to be December, and we're going to start to close out the year, which is just so incredible and wild to think about. I love you. I'm so grateful that I brought the pod back with you, angels, this year. And just thank you, as always, for tuning in and for supporting the show. It means a lot to me. I will see you very soon. Love you lots. Bye-bye.